On June 5th, 2026, a stablecoin tied directly to a sitting US president reached into the blockchain and froze an exchange. Not a wallet, not a scammer, an entire exchange. And its on-chain addresses switched off at precisely 1 p.m. UTC. The stablecoin is USD1, issued by Wlfi Financial, the Trump family crypto venture that takes 75% of token sale revenue and is co-founded by Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, and Barron Trump. The target was HTX, the exchange whose advisory board includes Justin Sun, the same man who poured roughly $75 million into the Trump crypto empire and helped give USD1 its credibility in the first place. By June 7th, HTX had delisted USD1 entirely and force converted every user balance into Tether at 1-to-1. But the truly extraordinary part goes well beyond the billionaire feud and the dueling lawsuits flying between California and Florida. It's what this single freeze quietly proved about the rails underneath your money. So today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how the alliance collapsed, dismantle the idea that this is just two rich men at war, and lay out who is actually exposed when a president's stablecoin can flip the kill switch. My name is DC and you're watching the Coin Bureau. Now, before we get into the freeze itself, you need to understand just how intertwined these two sides actually are, because this betrayal didn't come from strangers. Justin Sun is the founder of Tron Blockchain and one of the most prominent figures in Asian crypto. When he backed Wlfi Financial, he wasn't a passive investor. He put in roughly $30 million in November 2024 and then added another $45 million in January 2025 for about $75 million total. He was named an official advisor to the project. Justin held around 4 billion Wlfi tokens worth somewhere near $320 million at their peak. And his backing mattered because USD1 launched in March 2025 and rode that credibility to over $4.5 billion in market cap by April 2026. Put simply, Sun helped build the legitimacy of the exact stablecoin that just froze his exchange. Which brings us directly to how those two allies became enemies, because the smart contract Sun helped legitimize turned on him not once, but twice. The first turn came in September 2025, after Sun moved roughly $9 million worth of Wlfi tokens between addresses, including transfers to HTX. Wlfi Financial used a built-in Guardian address function to blacklist his personal wallet. Now, this is the part most people skip over, so let me be clear about what that function actually is. Centralized stablecoins embed an administrative blacklist directly into the token's code. So when the issuer adds your address to that list, the contract blocks you from sending or receiving the tokens. Your balance remains visible on chain, you just can't move a single cent of it. And they don't need a court order, your private keys, or your consent. That September freeze was the first time Wlfi fired that switch. The HTX freeze in June 2026 was the second time. And Sun did not take it quietly. He started accusing the project leadership of treating investors like a personal ATM. He pointed to a controversial $75 million loan Wlfi took from the Dolomite Landing Protocol against its own tokens. And he alleged the smart contract contained what he called a hidden backdoor, a function letting the team freeze or burn investor tokens without notice, court authorization, or any regulatory order whatsoever. He even went so far as to call Wlfi a dictatorship wearing the mask of a DAO. Now look, Wlfi tells a very different story, and this is where the lawsuits enter the picture. On April 21st, 2026, Sun filed suit in the US District Court for the Northern District of California. He alleged fraud, breach of contract, and unlawful seizure of assets, claiming tokens worth roughly $300 to $320 million were frozen without any justification. Wlfi fired back on May 4th with its own suit in Miami-Dade County Circuit Court in Florida. And their accusations were just as aggressive. They claim Sun orchestrated a coordinated media smear campaign using bots and influencers to tank the Wlfi token price. They claim he moved $300 million to Binance to short the token. And they brought in Quinn Emanuel, one of the most feared litigation firms on the planet, to fight it. Co-founder Zach Folkman called Sun's claims meritless, and Eric Trump, with characteristic restraint, compared Sun's lawsuit to a $6 million banana duct tape to a wall. So you have two separate jurisdictions, two separate legal theories, and two billionaires throwing everything they have at each other. Sun attacks the product, Wlfi attacks his behavior. Both cases are still pending and nothing has been ruled on. Now, you might assume this is where the story ends, a messy business divorce between a crypto mogul and a presidential dynasty, entertaining but ultimately private. However, that assumption completely misses what actually happened on June 5th, because this time the freeze didn't hit one wallet, it hit an entire exchange. So let us walk through the mechanics in plain terms. On May 26, the UK's Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office sanctioned an entity called Wlfi Global SA, a Panama-registered company linked to the HTX brand. The allegation was that it helped facilitate over $1.5 billion in illicit flows to Russia-linked networks. This was the first time the UK applied that specific regulation to a crypto exchange. On June 3rd, Wlfi issued a public advisory reminding the market it maintains, quote, risk-based sanctions compliance controls. 2 days later, on June 5th, it activated the blacklist against HTX-linked on-chain addresses. HTX immediately suspended trading on its USD1 and Wlfi pairs. And by June 7th, it had delisted USD1 completely, automatically converting every user's balance into Tether at a clean 1-to-1 ratio. So let me answer the question I know you're asking. Are user funds safe? Yes. No user lost any money. Everyone holding USD1 on HTX simply woke up holding the same dollar value in USDT, sitting in their spot account. The conflict here is political, not a technical exploit. But HTX was furious about the method. Its spokesperson, Wlfi, said the frozen assets were, quote, not assets belonging to any sanctioned entity, but assets legally purchased and owned by individual users. And then she said a line that should make every person in crypto sit up. Today, Wlfi holders are affected. Tomorrow, it could be anyone. User assets are not negotiable. And this is the part most coverage is too distracted by the drama to say out loud. So let me say it plainly. A stablecoin tied to a sitting president just demonstrated in public that it can freeze an entire exchange. Now, this is the structural turn, so stay with me, because here's where the billionaire feud stops mattering. USD1 carries a unique risk because it has a known political owner. The Trump family holds roughly 22.5 billion Wlfi tokens and a 75% revenue share. Control of the freeze function sits with a 3 of 5 anonymous multisig and a single guardian account. That is a small, unaccountable group holding absolute power over who can and cannot move USD1. And here's the honest truth. They didn't freeze HTX over a US court order. They froze it, citing a foreign government sanction of a legally distinct entity a company HTX insists isn't even the same business as the live exchange. Now, that is a far lower bar and a far more politically flexible one than anything we've seen before. Now, the obvious counter is that all centralized stablecoins can do this. And yes, that's true. But that's exactly the point. USD1 didn't invent the kill switch, it just used it in a way that put the politics on camera, because here's what makes this moment land harder than any previous freeze. The Genius Act, signed July 18, 2025, makes this capability a strict legal requirement. Any compliant US stablecoin issuer is now legally required to have the technical ability to block, freeze, or burn tokens. The freeze switch has evolved from a simple issuer policy into a strict statutory obligation for any entity operating inside the US financial system. And federal agencies face a rulemaking deadline of July 18, 2026, which is just weeks away as I record this video. Full implementation, when issuers must actually comply, takes effect no later than January 18, 2027, 18 months after enactment. Genuinely, think about that timing. The kill switch isn't a bug being debated, it's the law being finalized right now while this feud plays out, which brings us directly to the uncomfortable question. If the freeze power is real and now mandatory, who exactly is exposed? Let's compare the players because the numbers tell a brutal story. Tether has frozen somewhere between $2 and $4.2 billion across more than 7,200 addresses over its history. According to some on-chain analysts, Tether froze hundreds of millions of dollars across hundreds of addresses in the months leading up to May 2026, though precise rolling figures vary by source. Circle's USDC has frozen roughly $109 million across 372 addresses over its history, so freezing is not new. But here's the critical distinction. Tether and Circle freeze predominantly in response to law enforcement requests, court orders, and OFAC sanctions. They answer to regulators and judges. USD1 froze an exchange based on its own risk determination, following a foreign designation in the middle of a private legal war with that exchange's own advisor. That is the qualitative leap. So for you, the practical implications are very specific. So let me give you the watch list. First, understand the blast radius. The on-chain analyst Zach XBT warned that tainting addresses that ever interacted with HTX could create compliance friction for completely legitimate users across the ecosystem. So if you receive a politically linked stablecoin from a wallet that later gets flagged, your own funds can be scrutinized by association. Second, watch your exposure to any stablecoin with a concentrated, politically connected issuer. USD1's reserves are managed by BlackRock and custodied at BitGo, which sounds institutional and safe. But governance, the power to decide who gets frozen, stays with the Wlfi team. Reserve quality and freeze control are two completely different risks. Third, watch the decentralized alternatives, but understand their trade-offs. Truly decentralized stablecoins like LUSD use immutable ETH-only collateral and have no issuer free switch, but they're much smaller and much more volatile. And here's the catch that traps most people: DAI, the so-called decentralized stablecoin, holds USDC inside its reserves, which means Circle's freeze power reaches right into DAI itself. Under the Genius Act, any stablecoin that wants to be legal in the US must have a free switch. So in other words, decentralized and regulated is becoming an oxymoron. Fourth, remember the Tornado Cash lesson, because it's a warning about how flexible compliance really is. In August 2022, after OFAC sanctioned Tornado Cash, Circle immediately froze the associated USDC addresses. Then, in November 2024, the Fifth Circuit overturned those sanctions, ruling that immutable smart contracts can't be sanctioned as property. So the Treasury formally withdrew the sanctions in March 2025. The freeze was later found to be legal overreach. But here's the thing: the freeze still happened, and users had no recourse during that window. What looks like mandatory compliance today can be ruled illegal tomorrow, and your frozen funds won't know the difference while the case drags on. And fifth, watch where the liquidity actually flows when trust breaks. Here's the genuinely uncomfortable irony of this entire saga. When HTX force converted USD1 to USDT, it handed market share straight to Tether. The stablecoin with the single most aggressive freeze history on Earth became the safe haven when another stablecoin fired its switch. And that tells you everything about where this market is heading. Now look, before I give you the framing question, if you want our research team's read on every twist in the story as it unfolds, the lawsuits, the Genius Act deadline, the next exchange that might delist, then join us in the Coin Bureau Telegram channel. That's where we pin breaking news, deep dive alpha and market updates straight to your device so you don't miss the next move. The link is in the description and the QR code is on your screen right now. It really is worth it. So here's the part that ties it all together. The stablecoin market has grown roughly 56% in 60 months to around $319 billion. These rails now move trillions and trillions of dollars a year, rivaling Visa. And the entire industry is bifurcating in front of us. Institutional capital is gravitating toward regulated, freeze-capable tokens because for a CFO, the free switch is a feature, not a bug. DeFi purists are growing more wary of centralization with every public freeze, but the volume overwhelmingly still favors the centralized side. So the honest read is that the kill switch is here to stay, and the Genius Act just made it permanent. The only open question is whether events like this accelerate distrust fast enough to build a real decentralized counterweight, or whether the convenience of regulated dollars simply swallows everything. So this is the framing question I want to leave you with. Is USD1 freezing HTX a one-off, the predictable collateral damage of a billionaire match that fades from the headlines in a month, structurally contained? Or is it the proof of concept moment, the first time a stablecoin tied to a political power demonstrated on camera that it can freeze whoever it wants, structurally terrifying? Because the feud between Sun and the Trump family will absolutely fade. The precedent it set will not. So please get genuinely opinionated in the comments and let me know which side of this you land on. And if you want to understand exactly how the Genius Act rewired the rules for every stablecoin you touch, and why that July deadline matters so much, then definitely check out our deep dive right over here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon. This is DC, signing off.